Hello and welcome to the Destination Zero podcast from Cummins Group in India under the aegis of its popular Cummins PowerPods podcast. I'm your host Pawan R. Chawla, founder editor of MediaBrief.com, and I welcome you to the first episode of this podcast series, which is an important link in the chain of the Destination Zero decarbonization strategy from Cummins to help India move to zero emissions. Through the Destination Zero strategy, Cummins Group in India seeks to spread the word amongst and inspire and help co-opt other valued stakeholders to work together on the path to zero emissions. And I am delighted to welcome Ashwath Ram, Managing Director, Cummins Group in India, to speak about the strategy and its overarching mission to accelerate decarbonization. Ashwath, welcome to the first episode of the Destination Zero podcast from Cummins Group in India.
Hi Pawan, nice to talk to you.
Thank you, Ashwath, for your time. And let's quickly cut to the chase. So my first question to you, Ashwath, is we've heard Cummins leaders talking about climate change being the biggest existential crisis of our time. Why do you think there is strong urgency to address the issue today, especially in India and in your industry segment of commercial vehicles?
Yeah, so certainly for all of us, climate change is the existential crisis of our time. We've already seen the impacts of global warming. Globally, we've seen the polar ice caps melting, weather being more extreme around the world, especially in places like India. Climate change is having a pretty significant impact. India is now ranked 7th globally amongst the list of countries most impacted by climate change. The issue is particularly severe because we in India have a unique geography. We have a pretty long coastline and we are barricaded by the Himalayas in the north. So a lot of the weather change which happens in India, for example, in the winters where we have all the fog and the dense smog which happens in Delhi, etc., is all in a way connected with climate change. In 2022 itself, we have seen quite a few disasters, right from heat waves, cyclones, floods, landslides. According to the Center of Science and Environment, India has experienced something like one disaster per day during the first 9 months of 2022, which resulted in us losing over 2,500 lives, thousands of livestock destroyed, 400,000 houses destroyed. It has impacted about 1.8 million hectares of crop area. So the impact is very, very significant for us. And India, we emit about 3 gigatons of carbon dioxide greenhouse gases every year, about 2.5 tons per person. And we contribute to about 7% of global emissions of CO2. It's actually good news because we have 17% of the population. So as a matter of fact, we are emitting less than what other developed countries are emitting, but we are also a growing economy. So it's very important that as we try to grow and develop, we sort out these problems early in our growth journey than feel the impact much later in our life cycle.
Yes, indeed, Ashwath. Absolutely. It is an alarming picture and there is absolute need for the kind of action, proactive action that Cummins Group in India and even globally has been taking with its Destination Zero decarbonization strategy. So now, Ashwath, tell us more about Destination Zero and Cummins' strategy of decarbonization.
So Destination Zero is Cummins' global strategy to go further, faster to reduce greenhouse gases and air quality, which are the output of our products, and reach net zero by 2050. As you know, certain countries in the world like the United States and some parts of Europe have committed to become zero carbon emitting nations by 2050. So our strategy is very tightly connected to that ambition to be a zero carbon company by that time. And we want to do our part in addressing air emissions and ensure that our customers' success is powered with carbon neutral technologies that address air quality in a very comprehensive manner. We also believe that it's not a cliff event. It's not that 2050 is going to come and suddenly we are going to have access to some amazing new technology which will just transform everything and overnight the problem will be solved. We believe it has to be done in 3 phases. We have to do something today. With the technologies available today, with the products that we produce today, we need to make them cleaner and better. We need to do something in the medium term, which we call the messy middle, where many technologies will be competing, but scale will not be built up. And so Cummins is investing in many of these technologies to try to ensure that we have some skin in the game in different technologies as they evolve. And then comes the time between 2040 and 2050, where we think that we can get scale and there will be more clarity and definition of which technologies are going to win. Now, all of this ties into what India wants to do as well. So India as a country, we have committed that by 2070, we will be a zero carbon nation, which means Cummins as a group will be ready with the right technologies 20 years before India is fully ready to go carbon neutral. So we think that we are completely aligned with India's vision for energy for sustainable growth. And we are trying to lay out a plan which aligns with the 5-point agenda set up by the government, which they call the Panch Amrit Tattva, which they have signed up for during COP 2026. So in line with that, Cummins has come up with what we call Planet 2050. And this is a science and metrics based system by which there's a strategy of how we will get to zero carbon by focusing on 3 priority areas which we feel are most important. First, to address climate change and air emissions quality. Second, to use natural resources sustainably. And the third is by partnering with our communities so that everyone is working towards the same objectives and we can all move faster together.
Excellent.
And Cummins' goals and targets align with 12 of the 17 UN Sustainability Development Goals already. And there's a huge focus that Cummins is placing on innovation. We have little over 11,000 engineers in the global organization working today on moving the technology step by step to achieve this zero carbon target. And some of the technologies that we have already launched and we are already selling today, which are helping us leap forward towards zero emission vehicles, are technologies such as fuel cells, battery electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and there are multiple applications around the world because different technologies will be used in different market segments. So in applications such as school buses, intercity buses, where the range is smaller and where the payloads aren't very intensive, the technology is going to get adopted faster. So we are already ready with some of these technologies, but due to the upfront heavy cost of some of these systems, it is not yet ready for mass deployment in, let's say, like the commercial vehicle market as of today. And for that, what we are doing is we are introducing technology which we call hydrogen ICE, which means hydrogen being used in internal combustion engines. And that technology is already available with us today. We launched it at the IAA conference in Germany a few months ago, and we will be launching it at the Auto Expo in India. And we are working on localizing and using these technologies in India for India very, very quickly.
Excellent.
This is very important from an India perspective. As you know, we are an oil poor nation. We are also very deficient in rare earth metals like lithium, etc. So technologies like hydrogen will help our country solve the problem of energy dependence as well. So we hope to kill 2 birds with a stone by solving for the energy crisis and at the same time cleaning the atmosphere and introducing localized technology which will meet our zero carbon objectives.
Ashwath, that's an all-encompassing, exhaustive approach, and it just demonstrates how deeply Cummins Group in India is invested in its mission for decarbonization. Wonderful. Ashwath, Cummins is a 100+ years old manufacturer of diesel engines. Does decarbonization mean that, it's the end of the road for diesel engines?
Thanks, Pawan. That's a very good question which we get asked quite often. So let me start by giving you a little bit of a background and then I'll get into what our strategy is to make sure that we remain relevant for the next 100 years as well. 100 years ago, Cummins introduced diesel engines in North America when the entire engine technology at that time was using gasoline engines. So big V10 engines were used, which were gasoline powered. And at that time, the Cummins founders licensed technology from Germany and introduced the first 4-stroke intercooled engines. And with this, they were able to significantly improve reliability and fuel efficiency. And it's just been a growth journey since then, and we've kept building on technology to a point where Cummins now has some of the most innovative products as far as internal combustion engines is concerned. And as far as India is concerned, the Cummins Group has been in India now for 60 years. As a matter of fact, this year we are celebrating our 60th anniversary. And I feel extremely proud in saying that we have been a major contribution to the development of India, because our products get used in every market segment where mechanization, industrialization is needed. Our products are used there.
Wonderful.
We as in Cummins Group globally think that diesels are going to continue to last for a considerable time in the future. As we aim to become a zero carbon company towards 2050, we still think that there's quite a bit of steam left in diesel. And along the way, we are also developing significantly many technologies. For example, the diesel that is used today is significantly cleaner than what was used in India even 5 years ago. In 5 years, India has jumped in technology from Bharat Stage 3 to Bharat Stage 6. And now we are going to Stage 2 of Bharat's Stage 6.
Excellent.
And this technology has yielded in reducing emissions by more than 90% of what it was just 5 years ago.
Wonderful.
To give you an example of how much of an improvement that is, a BS6 engine today, after treatment, has lower carbon emissions output than an electric vehicle which is run with electricity, which is produced using 70% thermal power, which is what our grid is currently made of. So there is quite some time for these technologies to transition. The globe is moving from Euro 6 to Euro 7, and America and Europe are moving to similar kinds of technologies, and India will also move to similar kinds of technologies where diesel will continue to play a major part, because as of today it offers the best advantage from a user perspective in terms of power, performance, weight, durability, reliability. In parallel, we are developing the new technologies of the world, which means that we are developing in the same internal combustion engine. We can now burn LNG, CNG, we can add more ethanol in it, we can blend fuels, we can burn biofuels, we can use synthetic diesels. So there are many paths to get to zero carbon, and Cummins is well prepared to use all of those technologies over the next 30 to 40 years as we move towards the zero carbon world. So Cummins is continuing to invest in all these technologies, and you will hear of many launches that we will come up with in the next year or so. And many of these technologies will also be suitable to run the newer synthetic fuels, the low carbon fuels, to later run hydrogen. As I mentioned earlier, we are launching products which can burn hydrogen in an internal combustion engine. So we feel that we are very comfortably placed to be able to handle the transition as we move from a pure diesel economy to a multi-fuel economy, to eventually move towards a hydrogen and battery-powered economy. So Cummins has invested in all the right technologies to help handle this transition.
Excellent. Excellent. Really. Amazing work, Ashwath. Amazing vision, and so beautifully strategically in sync with what the requirement is. In fact, you all are ahead of the curve in terms of innovating for the future. Wonderful. Ashwath, you just mentioned, you used the word transition, and how Cummins Group in India is ready and poised, my words, to help the commercial vehicles industry in India to zero emissions eventually. And you have a great decarbonization strategy in place too, and there is complete investment also. So wonderful. How do you, Ashwath, as a highly respected professional in the commercial vehicle space and so much more, and as managing director of Cummins Group in India, how do you see India's journey or transition, the word you used, to decarbonization panning out?
So, Pawan, in my career, this is probably the most exciting time I've seen in India for some of these new technologies to emerge and get adopted. And I'll try to give you my perspective on where I'm coming from. So India is a developing economy, and in the last few years, we have been growing at a faster pace than most developed nations. And I think we are at an inflection point in our economy, a point where China was in the mid 90s to 2010, a 15-year period where considerable growth was seen. The economy came of age. There was a lot of development of infrastructure, and that development of infrastructure and spending led to significant growth in the economy. I think we are at that kind of inflection point in India. And as we think about our future, our path to decarbonization, we have to keep in mind that there is no one single correct answer. And we have to do what is best for our country. So it's a question of what technology is most suitable at this time to help us to meet a specific set of conditions. So we have to consider for our country, our geographic location, our geopolitical situation, our dependence on other countries for fossil fuels, the availability of immense amount of natural resources like sunshine in India, by which we can generate cheap and low cost green energy, which can then be used to convert water into hydrogen, the abundant agriculture that we have, which can produce ethanol, which can be blended into the diesel fuels, etc. So that we have a solution which is unique to India, and we are not just copying somebody else's situation because they are doing what is good for their country. And we need to do what is good for our country. And with that in mind, Cummins has been working on the roadmap for India and continues to develop and improve multiple technologies more suited for where India needs to go moving forward. So with that in mind, our focus in the last few years has been on first improving the diesel engine technology. We've moved from BS3 to BS6. We have also been improving fuel economy at the same time. So for the same amount of diesel that is consumed, you're emitting less, plus you're able to carry materials and goods for longer distances, so you consume less diesel. Our products today are already enabled to burn ethanol. So the moment the government makes ethanol available, we will be able to, our vehicles are already ready, our engines are already ready to run with the blends of ethanol. We are preparing for the national infrastructure for LNG and CNG to get ready. When that happens, again, we have products where we can burn those fuels in the engines and power vehicles. And we are getting ready to introduce hydrogen ICE at the Auto Expo in January. And as the hydrogen infrastructure develops, then we will be able to utilize that as well as we work towards the eventual journey of getting to zero emission vehicles. So Cummins Group in India has been investing to make all our products ready to run biodiesels, renewable natural gas, hydrogenated vegetable oils, all of which can reduce the greenhouse gases. The concern right now is the scalability of some of those fuels. While product is ready, the availability of those kinds of fuels in mass scale across the country is still a challenge. So they are being adopted and used in regional hubs as of today. And we are getting ready to when eventually we'll be able to produce a lot of green hydrogen within the country. And so Cummins is also investing in fuel cells and similar technologies by which we can use that clean hydrogen and make zero emission vehicles. So we have a very clear path set out from now to 2070 on how we can make things happen, and very excited about the opportunity to actually increase the pace of making this happen in India and producing these products in India.
Excellent. That was a wonderful visionary walkthrough, Ashwath. And I'm sure our listeners too will deeply appreciate the investment that Cummins Group in India is making in the future of energy. So thank you for that too, Ashwath. And now, Ashwath, after that excellent deep dive into how you see India's transition to decarbonization taking place, tell me what this transition will take. You did mention before we started recording the word collaboration.
Yeah, so one company, one part of the ecosystem cannot make an entire chain work. So we need all players in the ecosystem to make progress in respective areas for us to get to this zero carbon world that we are imagining. And the way we think about it is we need to totally decarbonize the entire value chain in the emission cycle. And this is what we call a well-to-wheel approach, which means we have to decarbonize from the point where, like oil is extracted out of the ground to when it is driving the wheels of the vehicle. If we don't make improvements in each of those areas, we are not solving the global warming or we're not solving the zero carbon solution. To give you an example, if we directly decide to move to battery electric vehicles and say from tomorrow, let's all start using battery electric vehicles. As I mentioned earlier, 70% of our grid is powered with thermal power, which means we burn coal to produce our energy. So you're not really solving for the carbon reduction output, because if you burn coal, you're putting more carbon into the atmosphere. So even though you may feel good that I'm driving this fancy Tesla car which claims to be zero emission, as a country, we are not solving that problem for ourselves. The second is that if everybody went to battery electric vehicles, our grid is not big enough to handle that consumption of energy. And the third part is that guess who has got the lithium to make the lithium ion or the lithium ferrous phosphate batteries that are used in all these vehicles? Not India. Most of the lithium in the world comes from China, Australia, Africa, and some parts of South America. India doesn't have some of those resources, which means instead of being dependent on the Middle East and other nations for oil, we'll be dependent on some other nation for lithium. So we have to think of an approach which looks at every part of the supply chain and solves to make that zero carbon solution. The second is the role of OEMs and technology providers. So OEM and technology providers need to invest and scale up their investments to introduce the products in the right kind of scale. Some of the technologies may be ready today, but if they don't get mass scale and mass adoption, then they are not cost effective and it will not get adopted. So OEMs and technology providers need to do that. They also need to update their business models to lower the cost of new technology products. To give you an example again, the cost of hydrogen today is anywhere from $7 to $9. The holy grail of hydrogen is that we should be able to get it to $1 per kg. We don't think that's possible for at least a decade or more. So it's a transition path, but till you can get hydrogen to that level, it is not cost effective. So we can only use it in limited areas. The third is collaboration with infrastructure providers. The big oil marketing companies, the big gas producers, they all need to plan and invest in new and better fuels, like they did when they came up with the BS6 fuels. They came up with that in record time. Similarly, they need to work on synthetic fuels. They need to be able to blend more hydrogen into natural gas. They need to be able to provide ethanol and help us blend that into the fuels so that we can increase the life of some of those products and reduce the carbon footprint. The fourth is the role of suppliers across the value chain. We have to have a very clear domestic manufacturing strategy. The internal combustion engine has been in existence for over 100 years. So the entire supply chain, which is already ready for that, will need to transition to new technologies. Otherwise, we will create mass unemployment in one of the biggest sectors in our country. And each of those companies need to do their part in decarbonization. This will require automotive component manufacturers as well as sales and service network providers to work hand in hand with the OEMs to focus on their second tier, third tier suppliers, and everyone will need to work towards decarbonization. And of course, the government is the biggest employer in our country. They also are the biggest investor in infrastructure. On the policy side, we do need supply side policies which are encouraging OEMs, like the PLI schemes that have been launched in certain segments. More need to be launched, especially in areas like hydrogen electrolyzers, hydrogen internal combustion engines, so that people can invest in those spaces. At the same time, they need to push to increase demand with policies such as scrappage policies, zero emission zones, and many others to increase demand from consumers. And finally, there's a big role of financial institutions because they are the ones who offer money and loans and products to help some of these new technology providers get into the market and sustain a period in which they are not really making a lot of money as new technologies get evolved. I'd like to conclude this by stating that I've been working with the government for quite some time through organizations such as SIAM and CII. And we have seen the government to be extremely proactive. As a matter of fact, the government has been pushing companies like Cummins to move faster. They have been coming to us and asking us, what do you need to make investments in India? What can we do to help localize better? What can we do to make India the leading player in some of these technologies? So that kind of proactive behavior from the government is something we are seeing, and we are very excited by the attitude shown by the government to want to change, to want to make India the destination for manufacturing and clean fuels and the destination for a zero carbon world. So this is a very exciting time from my perspective, and I think if all of us can work together, we can make a huge impact on how India emerges as a leading player with these new technologies.
Absolutely, Ashwath. You just summed it up so beautifully. And I see the collaborative approach across the spectrum. And I think Cummins Destination Zero strategy will actually enable and empower all the stakeholders to really pull their weight together. And of course, as you mentioned very, very correctly, it's also the government that is really empowering this. And if I may use the pun, driving the commercial vehicles industry's journey to zero emissions. So wonderful. So Ashwath, so far I've really enjoyed this conversation. So many insights, strategic and tactical, about the big picture of India on the road to decarbonization. Now, Ashwath, tell us about the different power technology solutions that we can expect from Cummins Group in India that will help responsibly empower India on the road to decarbonization.
Thank you for the question, Pawan. We are trying to do quite a bit with our group here in India. And we have shown time and again that whenever technology is changing, whenever emissions are getting tighter, whenever the demands of us are greater, those are the times when we have been able to come up with technical products and solutions which help our customers. What we've always tried to do is bring the right technologies for the customers at the right time. So as a group globally, we have access to a lot of technology, but we have always focused on saying, what does our market in India need to make it the most successful, to make our customers more successful, and bring that appropriate technology into the country. So from engines that power school buses to trucks that deliver goods, we are bringing the right technology to them. And we have been pretty focused on making sure our customers are successful. We are like a black box inside a vehicle. So you don't really hear about us. We don't market directly to end consumers. But we are at the heart in terms of technology of what makes the powertrain work. So we are trying to innovate across the range of power solutions to bring the right technology at the right time. So for India, we have already launched some prototypes of hydrogen-based fuel cell electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles. These are designed to emit zero emissions today from a well-to-wheel kind of perspective. But like I said, it is subject to the source of energy being green. So where consumers can get green energy, we already have zero carbon solutions available for them today. For the rest of the market who do not have access to green energy, we have launched other platforms. So we have launched cleaner diesel products. We are launching now cleaner diesel gensets with CPCB4 Plus, which is coming in next year. Similarly, in the industrial markets, they are going to the next tier of emissions, which make those products also significantly more carbon friendly. We are launching hydrogen ICE engines at the Auto Expo, and we have also launched quite a few LNG and CNG products as well. And as Cummins is evolving, we have also been preparing the infrastructure to produce hydrogen. So Cummins owns a company called Hydrogenics, where we also make electrolyzers, and these have multiple technologies. And we use these different technologies to take water and convert it into hydrogen and oxygen. And the hydrogen produced is green and clean hydrogen. So those kinds of technologies are also slowly being launched in India. We have a few pilot projects going on already, and we are working on additional projects in the future. We hope to accelerate the pace at which hydrogen ICE gets evolved as well as gets utilized in the country. There is also a retrofit opportunity to take some old vehicles which were running pure diesel and pull out the engine, swap it out and put in hydrogen ICE engines, so we can accelerate the pace of moving to green technologies in India. So it's a combination of these technologies. In April this year, we will move to a BS6 stage 2 that takes emissions to an even tighter level. So every aspect of technology that Cummins is evolving around the world, a portion of it is also being introduced in India in some manner. And because for India, we usually make in India for India and also use India as a major export hub, because we have huge advantages in cost and quality and efficiency. As we develop these technologies in India, we are also opening up markets around the world where we can export some of these products and components. And with all those things in mind, we have been investing pretty significantly in India. In the last 5 years, the Cummins Group must have invested close to $1 billion in setting up technology centers and infrastructure in India. We currently have a tech center in Pune where close to 2,500 engineers are working in India, not only for India, but for the rest of the world as far as Cummins is concerned. So the combination of all of these gives me great confidence that we will continue to keep introducing many new technologies and new products in India for India to make us and our customers extremely successful.
That's wonderful, Ashwath. Thanks for sharing such excellent insights and guidance. This has actually been a very interesting deep dive into all the important pillars upon which Cummins Group in India has based its laudable Destination Zero decarbonization strategy. And now, Ashwath, I'd like to ask you one last question before we wind up this episode. Tell me why you, Mr. Ashwath Ram, Managing Director, Cummins Group in India, believe that everyone must join your Destination Zero decarbonization strategy and mission for zero emissions in India.
Pawan, I don't think we have an option. What is the legacy that we are going to leave behind for our children and our grandchildren? So the legacy we want to leave is that, the earth was heading towards disaster, and we are the ones who have been able to stem that disaster and leave the world a better place. We want that kind of legacy. And the technology is already developed and is available to us. It's a question of having the motivation to do something better, not only for ourselves, but for generations to come. And you won't get a better opportunity in any other kind of industry. So my request is that everyone has to pitch in, otherwise it's not going to happen. And I'll also make my marketing spiel that come and join us at Cummins and help us do that. We are looking forward to the best, the brightest, the most diverse community from India to work with us to reach this goal of Destination Zero.
Thank you, Ashwath. That will inspire all our wonderful listeners to join the efforts to reach Destination Zero, for which the targets are to reduce in the next 8 years CO2 emissions to half, and then another 20 years thereafter, flatline the emissions to zero. So thank you once again, Ashwath, for all the time you've given for this conversation and for all the insights you've shared. And thanks also for the great work that Cummins Group in India is doing with Destination Zero.
Thank you, Pawan. Lovely talking to you.
So that was Ashwath Ram, Managing Director, Cummins Group in India, on this, the first episode of the podcast series Destination Zero podcast, which is part of the excellent Cummins PowerPods podcast series. I hope you liked and were inspired by this episode and will share it with your friends and others who can all contribute to collectively, responsibly helping drive the CV industry, the commercial vehicles industry in India, to zero emissions by 2050. Till we meet again in the next episode of the Destination Zero podcast series, this is your host and friend Pawan R. Chawla, founder, editor of MediaBrief.com, saying, take care, stay safe, drive safe. Bye-bye.